Welcome to today's presentation on the Wetland Reserve Enhancement Partnership Overview. Today's presentation will be provided by Andy Bishop with the Rainwater Basin Joint Venture, providing an overview of the wetlands that will be eligible for this program, while Brian Hughes with Natural Resources Conservation Service providing an overview of the programmatic details related to the program. Today we want to talk about the wetlands that will be eligible for this program, and then go into the programmatic details related to duration, program requirements, compensation, restoration activities, and additional cost share that can be available for grazing infrastructure and pivot modifications to ensure these tracts can be part of the working farm or ranch operation. What is a playa wetland? Today we'll talk about what these wetlands are, as well as the benefits from these wetlands, not only to the wildlife, but also to the residents within the Rainwater Basin and Central Table Playas, the two landscapes where these programs will be available. So a playa wetland. Playas were formed based on deflation, which is a natural process where the winds historically would blow out the lighter, loess soils, and the clay particles would then percolate into the soil profile, creating a clay pan. The soils are generally associated with a massy Scott or Fillmore wetland hydric soils. Also, they have Butler or Crete areas adjacent to the traditional wetlands that may have depressional areas that would be eligible for this program. As we've discussed, wildlife habitat is one of the primary goals for this program. Every spring, an estimated 8.6 million waterfowl utilize the Rainwater Basin. During this time, these birds can put on 20% of their lipid resources, and what this does is makes them in a better condition as they reach the breeding grounds. Ducks that are in better physical condition, that have more lipid reserves, are able to produce larger clutches, more apt to re-nest if they lose an initial nest, and have the opportunity to recruit more young into the population. Once these waterfowl leave these wetlands, though, they often dry out. They're ephemeral wetlands that don't pond water much longer than 2 or 3 weeks, depending on rain and snowmelt during the spring or the intense precipitation events like thunderstorms in the summer. These wetlands are very productive. As you can see from these four photos, the amount of vegetation that can grow in these wetlands can be upwards of 3 feet high. I've already talked about the waterfowl, but these wetlands are not only important for migrating waterfowl, but are also incredibly valuable for resident wildlife like pheasants, grassland nesting birds, shorebirds, amphibians, and the entire population of the wood buffalo, Aransas, whooping crane population is thought to use these wetlands in the Rainwater Basin or Central Table Playas at least once in their lifetimes during spring or fall migration. Many people recognize the value of these wetlands for hunting as well as bird watching and other recreational activities. The heavy clay soils that I talked about are very successful at removing nutrients and other runoff from the adjacent croplands, helping to clean the water and improve water quality through the groundwater recharge. It wasn't until recently that we've completed several monitoring projects and found out that 1 acre of restored playa wetlands can recharge sufficient water to irrigate 6 acres of adjacent cropland with a 6-inch allocation on an annual basis. We talked about the vegetation communities and the dynamic nature, but these wetland vegetation communities can produce upwards of 9,000 pounds of forage per acre. This can result in 4 times the typical stopping rates that you may see in a hard grass pasture. So there's great opportunity to utilize these wetlands for both grazing and/or hay production in those drier periods. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Hughes to talk about the programmatic details associated with this program.
Hello, this is Brian Hughes, Easement Program Manager for the Natural Resource Conservation Service here in Nebraska. I'm going to give you an overview, a little bit of an overview on the Wetland Reserve Enhancement Partnership Program and the program details. In the fall of 2020, the Rainwater Basin Joint Venture put in an application for the Wetlands Reserve Enhancement Partnership. In March of 2021, we found out that was approved by our national NRCS headquarters. The goal of this partnership is for 450 acres in the Rainwater Basin and Central Playas to be put into conservation easements. Reserved water right is part of this, where pivot crossing the easement is allowed. Also, variable rate irrigation may assist in this as far as moving the pivot through faster through the wetland part, or also making adjustments to the pivot to allow it to get through there. And also, grazing infrastructure is available from partners to possibly use grazing as a management tool on these wetlands. This is a map showing the areas that are approved for this WREP area. It's Central Table Playas and the Rainwater Basin. With these easements, a landowner can make an offer other than the things that I'm talking about below. The lower the purchase amount is, the better you can improve your ranking in the process. We have permanent easements where the producer or landowner will receive 100% of the total calculated offer for the easement purchase, and 100% of the restoration costs are provided by NRCS. We have a 30-year easement, which is 75% of total calculated offer for the easement purchase, and 75% of the restoration costs provided by NRCS. The other 25% is presented by the landowner, and there may be partner contributions available to help pay for that 25% of the restoration costs. Some of the requirements for the program is we're looking for 10-acre minimum enrollments unless the offer area is adjacent to an existing conservation easement already, to round it out, to possibly be able to get the entire wetland into the program and protect it all. There is no maximum offer acres, so you can go as large as you want as long as it meets eligibility. There is a requirement that you must own the land for at least 2 years. If not owned for 2 years, you can apply for a waiver to not have to meet that requirement. The wetland hydrology must be restored to the fullest extent possible. Mainly in these two areas, it's removal of sedimentation, fill concentrated pits, remove fill from within the hydric soil footprint, and recontour waterways. The greater the on-site restoration opportunity, the higher the ranking can be for the application. Another important program requirement is Upland Buffer. Upland buffers provide protection from our wetlands from siltation and provides habitat for upland wildlife. To maximize your ranking, it's best to have 25 to 50% of your offered acres in upland buffer. It has been found in the Rainwater Basin that a 120-foot buffer achieves excellent protection of these wetlands and will be within the 1-to-1 buffer or be within the 25 to 50% on most of our applications. If we have to exceed the 1-to-1 ratio of uplands to wetlands, a 1-to-1 waiver must be approved prior to moving forward. NRCS engineers, partner biologists, and landowners collaborate to identify restoration options. NRCS has the final decision with inputs from the partners on this restoration plan. Easement compensation for fiscal year 21 is we will be using the Yellow Book appraisal method. The appraisers will be using like land sales to assist in determining easement compensation. We do have some not to exceed rates. On irrigated cropland, it's $8,900 an acre, and not to exceed rate of $5,000 on all other land uses. This is the maximum that a landowner would get on certain land uses. A landowner cannot expect to get this on their applications because of the soil types that are being involved and stuff, but with the buffer, we get the prime soils. It is possible this amount would come into play on the buffer acres. In the past, our not to exceed rates were $4,488 for all land uses. So we have had a significant increase on the irrigated cropland not to exceed rate. The signups are continuous year-round with NRCS. You need to sign a NRCS CPA 1200 form. It asks that you visit your local NRCS field office. They will work with you through this process, but at the same time, we need a copy, clear, readable copy of your ownership deed to prove that you've owned the land for 2 years. We need a map that shows us the proposed boundary that you're putting into the program. You need to be in compliance with HEL land and wetland criteria. And again, as I mentioned before, we ask that you work with your local USDA NRCS county offices. There will also be other items required for eligibility. Once you sign an application, our area easement specialist may be contacting you to make a field visit, to look at the site. Partners may be involved to see what the restoration can be and work on the ranking of that application site. Application cutoff dates announced 30 days prior to application ranking deadline. Our application deadline for this year is April 30th, 2021. So you must sign an application by the close of business, April 30th, 2021. When you do come in to sign an application, we ask that you bring the deed, the proposed boundary, If you're an entity like a trust or an LLC or a company, we ask that you bring those papers in too, so that we can tell who has signature authority for those. And then the team will work with you on the rest of the eligibility elements that need to be taken care of. The landowner controls access of these for hunting, fishing, and recreational activities. The management of it, the landowner must work directly with NRCS to develop a management plan. And then these management plans are applied through the use of a compatible use authorization. Management tools that are used quite often in the Rainwater Basin are grazing, haying, chemical treatments for trees or invasive species such as reeds, canary grass, or cattails. Prescribed burn is another authorization that's used. But to do any of these type of practices, you have to have compatible use authorization approved ahead of time. It's not a guarantee you will get grazing, haying, but we do use it as a tool, and it is a very efficient tool that we have had a lot of success with. There is also partner cost share possibly available for helping on grazing infrastructure. They could help cost share on the perimeter fence, possibly with livestock water, cross fencing the site, and also putting in pivot crossing ramps. Again, the grazing infrastructure is by partner cost share, but it does help you if you do get a CUA approved to do grazing, help you manage that ground. And cross fencing does come in quite handy because certain times of years you're going to want to graze the wetlands, and other times of the year you're going to be in the uplands. The other things that the partners could help with is flotation tire solutions or variable rate irrigation to help manage that pivot as it crosses through the wetland area. The flotation tires make it easier to go through, and the variable rate irrigation could help speed up the pivot, shut nozzles off or whatever it may be to get the pivot across the wetland without using much irrigation water. This concludes our presentation. If you are interested in the program, please contact your local NRCS office, and they will assist you with your questions and help you through the process of getting signed up.